What's going on, Warriors, and welcome to another episode of the Mental Health Movement Podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. Thank you guys so much for tuning into the new season premiere with my newest episode with Dr. Deborah Vinall. I greatly appreciate everybody's support. That podcast did really positive numbers. And as of today, we are officially in 11 different countries with this podcast. So I greatly appreciate all your support and all your help. I honestly couldn't do it without any of you. Um, Thank you for constantly tuning in, sharing, and whatever else on your social media platforms. It's honestly, this journey has been. I can't even explain how incredible. I am so grateful and so blessed for everything that has happened up until now. I'm excited to see who else I get on this podcast and what other content I'm able to cover to help you guys. So again, thank you guys so very much. January's been one of the fastest months I think I've ever experienced. We're going to be on February on Wednesday, and this podcast comes out the last day of January on the 31st. So I kind of want to bring back something I did last season. Now that I officially have the mental health calendar for 2023, an accurate one at least. And next month, the very first week of February is National School Counseling Week. So, pay attention to your kids' emotions and what they bring home, man, because as great as therapy has been for me, 2 almost 3 years, I'm absolutely grateful for Jess. I think she's one of, if not the most incredible human being I've ever met in my life. She's has changed my life and has helped guide me in places I never thought were possible. So, Jess, whenever you do listen to this podcast, thank you so much. Um, it's been incredible. This journey has been incredible, and I wouldn't change a thing. But for the school counseling conversation, pay attention to your kids. Try to listen to what they're going through. Everybody's feelings and trauma is valid. Doesn't matter what age. I wish I could have gotten help a lot sooner than I did, but I'm glad that I have the help that I do now. But with that being said, pay attention to your kids, validate what they're going through and just try to listen, give them a little guidance, because it just seems like this new generation of kids that are coming out are just, so in tune with just technology and not socializing that it's hard to have conversations with them. So before these suicide rates get out of control, and in my opinion, they're very out of control right now, and I would like to see those numbers go down significantly. But that conversation starts at home. It starts out with the people that you're surrounded by. Check on all your friends, your strong friends too, because you never know what anybody's going through. I'm comfortable enough to share with you guys that recently I had called the crisis hotline for myself. Unfortunately, dealing with just things that were going on at home with my family, and just things kind of fell apart, and I felt the need to reach out. So for those of you going through a hard time right now, I just wanted to let every single one of you know that you're not alone, and help is only three numbers, 988 away. I'm here for you too. Whatever guidance I can help you with, whatever advice I can give you, or even if you just need an ear, man, I'm here for all of you. Today's topic, kind of goes into many of my other podcasts, more specifically the gaslighting podcast I did with Dr. Deborah. This topic is going to be on trauma bonding. I feel it's a very important topic to cover. It was suggested by one of my friends, Brandon, and I thought it was a great idea. It was a great topic to cover. It's one of those words I feel like a lot of people throw around that just kind of don't know what it means. Be like, oh yeah, I'm trauma bonding with this person, or the whatever situation you find yourself in. So, what is trauma bonding? Trauma bonding occurs when a narcissist repeats a cycle of abuse with another person, which fuels a need for validation and love from the person being abused. So it goes back to the conversation about my mom. I've talked a little bit about her here and there. I try not to make this podcast about me, but I feel in order to talk about these topics, I have to share a little piece of my heart with you guys. And I just want to express to you that dealing with a narcissistic parent is probably one of the hardest things you can do in your life. It takes a mental toll on your health. It puts you in so many bad places, and it makes you question your worth. So if you're ever in a situation where you're questioning your worth, you're questioning whether or not you belong here, I'm here to tell you from my experience, you are absolutely worthy of everything good in this life. Everything that this life has to possibly offer you, you deserve in the best possible way. I questioned my worth for so long because of my mom, because of what she put me through, whether it was verbal abuse, whether it was physical abuse. I had a trauma bond with her. I constantly seeked that validation from my mom. I want to make you proud. I want to do things that how you would say I would do things, like going to college that didn't work out for me, or working at a job and getting full time and getting promoted over and over, and looking for that congratulations that I never got, and constantly being gaslit by that person saying that I'm not doing enough, or love bombing me to death after the fact that spent 3 hours berating me. So trauma bonding can come from romantic relationships, can come from your colleagues, it can come from non-romantic family members, and of course your friends. Whether or not you realize the other things outside of family, the trauma bonding especially, and it's mostly common in relationships, when you feel that this person can do no wrong because they say they love you, that you're constantly being talked down to, but then they show you all the good things that they can offer to you just so they can stay in control. And what they do is they normalize those toxic behaviors. They basically groom and train you to think a certain way so they can do no wrong. You're giving more power to the abuser, leading to further manipulation. And it's something that many of us can't help. You get that stuck feeling that you don't know what to do with your life, or you don't know what to do about a certain relationship, whether it's with a family member or it's with a romantic partner, or it might even be colleagues that you work with or your friends. You don't know what normal, quote unquote normal, I use the word normal, I don't know what normal looks like. you know Always grew up saying I wish I was normal, and nobody knows what the hell normal is, so I just keep on keeping on, just to quote Joe Dirt, to be corny, life's like a garden, you dig it. um but when you get stuck in that cycle of trauma bonding, and you're constantly being shown how awful this person can be, how controlling and manipulative this person can be, and then when you start noticing those things and you mention it, all of a sudden, hey, I'm going to take you on a vacation, take care of you, or we're going to have a great time. And they put on this whole facade. They put on a mask, if you will, to cover up the ugliness of their personality, the manipulation that they have. And it's just one of those things where you're not really sure. Some people know what red flags to look for in a narcissist, and then there's the people who are just stuck in that cycle of that's all that they know, so nothing comes up as a red flag. I've never truly experienced what love is from a family member, because going from my parents to grandparents to whatever, I've always felt my feelings were always invalidated. They were always, I was wrong for feeling this way. I was wrong for being upset about this for a certain reason, whatever it was. And in an abusive relationship, you're constantly being gaslit. You're constantly being love bombed. You're constantly being questioned for why you are the way that you are, thinking that you're a bad person. There are 7 different stages of trauma bonding. And before we talk about why we fall into this pattern of trauma bonding. Let's talk about what the 7 stages look like. So stage one, and these don't really go in a specific order. Stage one is love bombing. Like I said, constantly saying I love you or constantly giving out compliments, and them none of them holding water. For the longest time, when me and my mom weren't talking, and she would just say I love you just because it's something you're supposed to say to somebody, right? You're somebody you truly care about, you say I love you to. But when you start treating them like shit constantly, and all you say is, oh, I'm sorry, I love you, or I'm sorry, I did it because I love you, and that I love you just holds no water. It becomes meaningless. And I'm very careful of who I say that to because of trust issues. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm a grown ass man. I have no issues saying that I have trust issues with people, whether it was from abandonment or it's from past traumas. Stage two is trust and dependency. Again, you're feeling normalized, or being groomed into what they think is normal for you. Criticism is something that will always be a thing with narcissists. You can never do anything right, and you'll always be a punching bag to them. Manipulation and gaslighting go hand in hand with each other. Like we talked about in my last podcast, narcissists are heavy on every aspect of control. Manipulation is basically their MO, and gaslighting is just something to create that illusion of you being crazy. And I hate that word, but it's you're crazy. I would never do something like that. Or no, I did this because of XYZ, and makes you question yourself. It makes you question, am I wrong for being upset with this? Was I supposed to be doing this with this person? And then resignation and giving up is just something that you give into. You feel stuck and you don't know what to do, so you've used up all your options, and it's just one of those unfortunate things where you're trying so long to fight back and you just use all of your mental energy up. And I've absolutely been there. Just to kind of tell a little piece of myself for you guys, with my mom, the last really big fight that her and I had was when I was still living in Jersey. And if I've told this story, I apologize, but the last argument that her and I got into was her screaming in my face for 3 straight hours. I didn't say a word the entire time. She called me names. She tore me down. She treated me like absolute dog shit. And, I was just at a point where I didn't know what else to do. I gave up. I called my dad. I called my grandma, and, in tears, because that was supposed to be somebody, that's supposed to care about me. That's supposed to say, I love you and mean it. And, she betrayed my trust. She broke my heart, and she destroyed me. Fast forward to 2023 now. That was 2018, 2017, somewhere around there. And I wouldn't take that now. I have boundaries, and, I implore anybody that is struggling with a hard parent or struggling with a hard friendship or relationship, always, always, always make sure your boundaries, and you have boundaries and you stand on those boundaries. Don't make an exception for anybody, because the second you do, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. I know it's a cliche saying, but it'll forever be true. So the next step is being, loss of self, which, you're losing your identity. You don't know if this is what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life, if this is how you're supposed to be treated for the rest of your life. And then addiction to that cycle. You're, again, that revolving door of just nonstop misery and nonstop gaslighting, and, just kind of getting to the point of, when will it be time for me to be happy again? And when they give you that false sense of hope, and then that cycle keeps going. Boundaries is something that might help you get through this vicious cycle of trauma bonding. Why do we do it? Why do we get stuck in that trauma bonding cycle? And it basically comes down to being the result of reinforcement from the abuser. They alternate their bad behavior with positive experiences. They take you on a vacation, they buy you something nice, they give you breakfast in bed, or it doesn't really matter. A kind gesture could be a positive experience. A kind gesture can provide what you need as a person, that kindness, that compassion. And they know that's what they can provide to you temporarily, just so they can keep you under their thumb. And all it does, it just leads to the development of a stronger trauma bond. You get to the point of feeding their validation and feeding that addiction to just drain the life out of you like a leech, essentially, that you know they narcissists don't have a direction of stopping when they have somebody in their control, when they have somebody in their grasp. And when you're stuck in that cycle of trauma bonding, it's one of those things where, unless you know the signs, unless you know how to protect yourself and how to give yourself boundaries and honoring yourself, basically everything that I've learned in therapy broke that cycle for me. It helped me understand and accept why my parents are the way that they are and that they'll never change. When you're able to finally put yourself first while you're still in the middle of this cycle, you give yourself a chance to break that cycle. All they're doing is trying to train and groom you, as a result of their reinforcement behaviors. They want you to constantly be under their thumb no matter what they do to you, whether it's cheating on you, whether it's mistreating you in front of your colleagues, whether it's talking to somebody who betrayed you and they're supposed to be your best friend. And it'll just constantly run its course until you have fallen to your knees and submit to them. And that's something that we have to do our best to fight against. It's a lot easier said than done, right? But once you have a plan in place and you know what you want out of life, happiness doesn't look the same for everybody. Like I said in my social norms podcast, success doesn't look the same to everybody, and that goes the same for happiness. That goes the same for peace. Whatever. It all starts at home. It all starts with you. Once you can start looking in the mirror and say, I love you, and start giving that self-love, it's really hard to break this cycle. And it's really hard to put yourself first if you can't love yourself. If you don't think you're worthy of love, you challenge your mental health even further than it needs to be challenged. And breaking the cycle that I broke, whether it was being a young parent, whether it was, treating others the way my parents treated me, I destroyed that cycle. And that was because I got to the point of just being abused for one too many times. And unfortunately, it wasn't because of therapy that I came to that breakthrough. It came to the giving up, the resignation, that I'm done, I quit, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to let you treat me the way that you treated me. And that's what happened with my mom. I didn't respond, and she kept laying it into me. She kept calling me names. She kept tearing me down and doing all those things. And it got to that point where I was ashes. I was completely done. And as soon as I reached out to a therapist up there before I met Jess, she told me the first 2 sessions I couldn't look her in the eye. And I think we were only in therapy together for 3 months. I think I saw her. And when I finally made that decision to leave Jersey and to better my life and better my mental health, I kind of was, I don't want to say I was gaslit, but I feel like I kind of was by my aunt saying that, I was only in Jersey for a year and I didn't really give it a chance and just kind of overlooked what I went through with my mom. And um, yeah, it's a hard relationship I have with my family because deep down I love my family, and it's hard to separate what I want out of our family versus what I get. And most of the time, our relationships don't really improve. Almost every year during the holidays is the same. Whatever the case is in our family, it just doesn't ever seem to change. But with that being said, when I came down here and I met Jess after another therapist that kind of led me in the wrong direction. I met Jess, and she helped breathe life and breathe life back into me. Sorry, um, and I rose from those ashes. I was able to smash that cycle. I was able to have my mom stay here for a week and establish those boundaries with her and let her know that I'm not that same guy that I was when I was in Jersey, and you're not going to treat me the way that you did. So all I'm getting at in my rambling, and I apologize for rambling, is healing is possible. Breaking this cycle is possible. I'm not saying that I'm stronger than anybody. I'm not saying that it was easier for me than it is going to be for anybody else. But if you can look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you're going to do this and you can do this, God damn it, you're going to do it. You're going to accomplish what you want to accomplish. Tell your heart that you're worthy of that love. Tell your heart that you're worthy of getting out of this abusive relationship that you find yourself in. Let's talk about the common risk factors of trauma bonding. So, of course, there's the poor mental health, which I kind of expressed to you of where I was and where my journey has led me. Low self-esteem, another thing I struggled with for a very long time. I don't like my face without a beard. My size is unacceptable, and I'm doing things to change all that. I'm doing things to better myself. Um, Financial difficulties. I feel like this is something not talked about enough. When you're stuck in an abusive relationship, or you have a narcissistic parent that abuses you in any kind of way, verbally, emotionally, physically, and you're trying to save up all your money to get out of that situation, but there's always something that narcissist needs money for. I need help with this month's bills, or I need you to start paying half of everything, etc. And when you become an adult and you're finally doing things on your own, you struggle. You live from paycheck to paycheck, or you just make enough to pay your bills and eat food that's low cost. No support system. Oh man, when I was in Jersey, with the exception of my aunt, I had nobody. I never had a strong relationship with my sister. Living with my mom was a nightmare. My aunt, I had her support, but again, like I kind of talked about before, when I left Jersey, she I don't think she intentionally gaslit me, but she gaslit me and basically tried to make me think that my decision was the wrong one to make when she really didn't understand or know the extent of the situation. So, again, having no support system was brutal. I hated it. I'll never go to a state where I don't have any kind of support or any friends. Past trauma, again, with growing up with my parents and being the way that they were, just kind of stuck in that cycle for a long time. History being bullied. I was bullied heavily in school, by my parents, by my grandparents. Bullying is something that I'm heavily passionate about and wish it would just stop altogether. There's teasing and building character. Parents were always saying that bullying is building character and you're making that person mentally stronger. And I feel with this new generation of, we're supposed to watch everything we say and everything's offensive and warning labels around everything. We didn't have that when I was younger. So imagine living in the world that we grew up in and not having warning labels on everything, not having our parents hover over us, or having a parent there to catch you if we fell off our bike. Nothing. We had to learn from every trauma we got put through. When I was 8 years old, when my parents got divorced, I wasn't mentally trained to deal with that, and it took my first grade teacher to reach her hand into my soul and let me know that I didn't have to go through a divorce alone. And I've stayed uh, close with her ever since, and I've known her for over 15 years, and she's one of the most important parts of my life. She holds a very special place in my heart and in the foundation that I stand on today. So, Teresa, if you do end up listening to this podcast, forever thank you, because you have helped me through a lifetime of hell. But kind of back to the bullying thing. Um, again, I understand why society is the way that it is today, and bullying has gotten worse since I was a kid. But I wish parents would pay more attention to what their kids are going through. I hate reading kids taking their life at 15 years old because they're getting bullied at school, or a wrestler taking their life because they're getting bullied on Twitter. It's conversations like that just frustrate me, because you don't know what these people are going through. You don't know what abuse they're facing, and people just feel the need to just dig to bury that knife wherever they can stick it. We kind of talked about this in the stages, but no personality, identity. You lose yourself when you're dealing with a narcissistic relationship, especially if it's trauma bonding, or being love bombed. You don't know what your purpose is on this earth. You don't know what your worth is. You don't know what you're supposed to do, and all you know is pain. And like in Rick and Morty, the Mr. Meeseeks, existence is pain. And I know in the show that's meant to be, a funny because of the character, but it is true. When you're dealing with a narcissistic or abusive relationship, from colleague to family, existing just hurts, because you don't know what you're doing wrong. And you're constantly being told that you're doing something wrong and you don't know how to fix it. So the different signs of trauma bonding, just in case, if you find yourself in a situation where you're not really sure if you're being, if you're in the middle of a trauma bond. So the signs of trauma bonding is basically feeling in debt to your abuser, no matter what they do, no matter what they say to you. You always feel like, oh well, they did this for me, so I can't walk away from this relationship because they mean too much in my life, or they saved my grandma from falling off a bridge or whatever. And you just constantly feel, no matter how badly that person treats you, like me with my mom, you're constantly in debt. Just to get actually a little deeper on the mom conversation, my past therapy session with Jess was pretty heavy. We talked about the crisis hotline when I called them and everything, and I basically told her, I said, with everybody cutting my mom off because of a circumstance situation that we're going through, and I said, if I was the last person to cut her off and block her from everything and never talk to her for however long, and she were to take her life, I would feel guilty for the rest of my life because she did that. Now, her being a narcissist and threatening of taking her life, I know she wants that control, and I know she just wants people to feel bad for her no matter what she does to people. But again, it's just one of those things where my inner child screams out and saying that, we don't want to be responsible for the passing of my mom. I don't want anybody to take their life, and even more so a parent. So, I wanted to share that piece with you guys because I felt like it was something I needed to bring up on the podcast. Um, Protecting the abuser is something that I know I was a little guilty of for a while, until I realized just how awful that she was becoming. I protected my dad a lot too for the longest time, not realizing the things that he did. He didn't do nearly as bad of things to me as my mom did, but again, it's not a matter of who did more, who did less. It's they both were guilty of it, and they both had a negative impact on my life, unfortunately. Um, Covering negative emotions, I'm guilty of this, very, very guilty of this. Wearing a mask and just kind of showing the face that everybody wants to see, the smile, the happy Chris, everything's great, everything, happy life, whatever. Um, and it's hard to hide. It's hard to show those emotions to people because being vulnerable is not easy. And that's one of the biggest reasons I wanted to do this podcast, was because being vulnerable is something not many people are willing to do, and it's something that I've become a little more comfortable with every podcast and every guest that I've had. I can openly express to you guys you know what I'm struggling with, and I want you guys, whoever is struggling with that at the same time, to let them know that they're not alone. um your friends and family don't approve of a relationship that you're in. um I would say, to this one, when I did read it, I understand what they were meaning of, family members not approving. But if it's one of those things they don't approve because whatever past experience they had them, that's one thing. But if they constantly see you're being talked to or treated a certain way, and that's definitely something to look out for. Multiple roles for the abuser. So it kind of took me a little bit to stew over this, just to try and understand what they meant by multiple roles. And with a narcissist, you're kind of their shield, their punching bag, their wallet, their whatever, their scapegoat, whatever they're going through. You're whatever they want you to be. You're wearing multiple hats. You're constantly changing yourself for their benefit. And that is probably the biggest red flag here, because if you're doing that for a relationship, I think it's time to look in the mirror and realize that you may have lost your personality. You may have lost your identity, essentially. Um, of course, at the end of every podcast, I like to read quotes. It took me a little bit to find an appropriate quote with this situation, because there's so many on narcissism and very little on trauma bonding, only because it only shows definitions of it in different fonts and stuff. So I did find one. This one is by a Jada DeWall. And it reads, "It can be difficult to leave a long-term relationship, even when our inner wisdom tells us it's time to let go. At this point, we can choose let go and endure the intense pain of leaving behind the familiar, to make way for a new chapter in our life. Or we could stay and suffer a low grade pain that slowly eats away at our heart and soul like an emotional cancer, until we wake up one day and realize we are buried so deep in the dysfunction of the relationship that we scarcely remember who we were and what we wanted and needed to be." That is probably one of the most powerful quotes I think I've ever read. Just because it embodies everything that I have gone through in my journey of healing, and being stuck in that cycle for so long and not really knowing anything other than how I was being treated. Um, Excuse me. And again, just kind of looking in the mirror and telling myself what I deserve, and telling myself um, the positive things that I can welcome into my heart. I'm able to have that inner peace. I'm able to experience that happiness. And it took me a while to believe that, but I just want to express to everybody who listens every single week, or every podcast rather, that no matter what you're going through in life, no matter how great things are, how bad things are, always be kind to everybody around you. I'm not saying go to your abuser and give them a big hug and say thank you, but always be kind to each other, and just acknowledge what people are going through. Reach out to friends you haven't talked to in a couple months and just check up on them. Check up on the people that you wouldn't suspect would be going through something. I wish people would do that for me sometimes, because it doesn't happen very often. I think I maybe have a handful, maybe one or two people that do that consistently, and just make sure I'm okay. And I struggle very silently. I don't show it, that I'm struggling, and if I do, I usually pour my heart and soul into a post, or I'll say it on this podcast, and um, you know, kind of deal with it that way. But I've been trying my best to express myself a little bit more and more as the months move on. But until the next podcast, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of Trauma Bonding. I hope you guys get something out of it. Please give me some feedback, any questions you may have for me, or anything that you may be curious about, or something I didn't cover in here. Always welcome criticism or any kind of feedback that you can give me. I greatly appreciate it. Until next time, remember to always be kind to each other, and please always be gentle with yourselves. Take care and be well.